I'm Adrian, 26 years old, and a software developer in Boston. For 2 years, I saved $14,000 for a down payment on my first apartment. Yesterday, I came home excited about a bonus announcement at work. Instead, I found my bank account completely empty. "Now you'll know how to show off with your salary," my mom said with a smirk. Dad grinned. "Go back to work. We're planning a trip to Tokyo with your next paycheck." Then my sister walked in holding keys to a brand new car. They had no idea what was coming. Hey, before I continue this crazy story, drop a comment where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted. Growing up in suburban Massachusetts wasn't easy with my four parents. They were the definition of middle class on the outside, but behind closed doors they struggled with finances constantly. The weird part, they had too much pride to accept help from anyone. My dad, a salesman at a local furniture store, would come home complaining about bills, but would refuse assistance from his own brother. Mom worked part-time as a receptionist at a dental office and handled our family finances, if you could call it that. Mostly it was juggling which bill to pay late this month. I learned early that if I wanted anything, I needed to earn it myself. At 16, I got my first job bagging groceries at the local supermarket. When college applications rolled around, my parents sat me down for the talk. Not about birds and bees, but about how they couldn't afford to send me to college. No college fund, no savings, nothing. They looked disappointed, but not nearly as disappointed as I felt. "We always thought things would get better financially," Dad explained, not meeting my eyes. "But life happens." That summer I worked 2 jobs and applied for every scholarship imaginable. When acceptance letters came, I chose the state university that offered the best financial aid package. Even then, I took out loans and worked 20 hours a week at the campus IT department while maintaining a full course load in computer science. My relationship with my parents grew distant during those years. They rarely called to check on me, but when they did, the conversation inevitably turned to their financial problems. "The furnace broke," or "Dad's car needs a new transmission." I learned to change the subject quickly. After graduation, I landed an entry-level programming job at a tech startup in Boston. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was enough to rent a small studio apartment and start paying off my student loans. Most importantly, I could finally begin saving for something that mattered to me, my own home. My lifestyle was modest by any standard. My apartment was barely 500 square feet, with furniture mostly sourced from thrift stores and giveaways. I drove a 12-year-old Honda with over 150,000 miles on it. While my co-workers splurged on fancy dinners and weekend trips, I packed lunches and tracked every dollar in a spreadsheet. For 2 years, I lived this way, watching my savings slowly grow to $14,000. My younger sister Emma was a different story altogether. 3 years younger than me, she had somehow escaped the financial responsibility lessons that had been forced upon me. Mom and Dad bent over backwards to give her everything she wanted, dance lessons, to a car for her 16th birthday, and even paid her cell phone bill well into her 20s. When she decided college wasn't her thing after 1 semester, they didn't bat an eye. She moved back home and took a part-time job at a clothing store, spending most of her paycheck on clothes and nights out with friends. I never resented her for this uneven treatment. If anything, I felt sorry for her. She never learned self-reliance or the satisfaction of earning something through hard work. But I did maintain a certain distance from her. Our lives and values were simply too different. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. I was called into my boss's office expecting the usual project update meeting. Instead, he told me I was being promoted to senior developer with a 20% salary increase. "You've earned this, Adrian," he said, shaking my hand. "Your work ethic is exceptional, and the team values your contributions." That night, I updated my budget spreadsheet. With the raise, I could reach my down payment goal of $25,000 within 6 months. For the first time, homeownership felt within reach, a small condo, nothing fancy but mine. The next day, I made a stupid mistake. I was updating my password journal, an actual physical notebook, where I kept all my passwords hidden in my desk drawer. Old school, I know, but I've never trusted digital password managers. I wrote down my new banking password, never imagining anyone would find it, much less use it. 2 days later, Mom called something that rarely happened, unless she needed something. Adrian, honey, we heard about your promotion from Emma's friend who works in your building. We're so proud Dad and I want to come visit this weekend to celebrate. I was suspicious, but also hopeful. Maybe they were finally recognizing my achievements. Maybe our relationship could evolve into something healthier. Sure, I agreed. I could cook dinner on Saturday. Oh no, we'll take you out somewhere nice. Our treat, she insisted. You deserve it. That Saturday I worked late finalizing a project. When I got home around 7 in the evening, I was surprised to find not just my parents but also Emma in my apartment. They'd let themselves in using the spare key I'd given them for emergencies. The table was set with actual wine glasses, not mine, they must have brought them, and Dad was uncorking a bottle that cost more than I typically spent on wine in a month. There's our big shot tech guy, Dad called out when I walked in. Mom hugged me tightly. We ordered from that Italian place down the street. The food should be here any minute. Emma lounged on my sofa, scrolling through her phone. Congrats, bro, she said without looking up. Something felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. Maybe they really were just proud of me. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. If only I'd listened to my instincts. The delivery guy arrived with enough food to feed 8 people, not 4. Dad insisted on paying with a flourish, pulling out a credit card I didn't recognize. New card, I asked casually. Just came in the mail, he replied with a wink. Better rewards program. We settled around my small table, squeezing in with the excessive amount of food between us. Mom poured generous glasses of wine for everyone, and Dad raised his glass. To Adrian moving up in the world and making us proud. The conversation flowed surprisingly well. They asked about my job, seemed interested in my projects, and didn't once mention their financial problems. It felt surreal, like having dinner with alternate universe versions of my parents. So when are you going to upgrade from this closet, Dad asked, gesturing around my small apartment. Actually, I've been saving for a down payment, I said, feeling a rare moment of pride. I'm getting close to my goal. Mom and Dad exchanged a quick glance that I couldn't interpret. That's our boy, Mom said, patting my hand, always the responsible one. Just then my phone buzzed with a notification. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. It was my banking app withdrawal confirmation. $14,000. Thank you for your transaction. My stomach dropped. I hadn't made any withdrawal. Excuse me, I mumbled, stepping away from the table. With trembling fingers, I opened the app and logged in. My savings account balance read $46.78, just the remnants of the $14,000 I'd spent 2 years accumulating. The withdrawal had happened 3 hours ago while I was still at work. I rushed back to the table, my heart pounding. Did either of you access my bank account today? I demanded, my voice shaking. Mom dabbed her mouth with a napkin, completely calm. Don't be dramatic, Adrian. My entire savings is gone. $14,000 withdrawn today. I didn't do it. Dad leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. Consider it a life lesson, son. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A life lesson, that's my money. Money I worked for. Mom's expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Now you'll know how to show off with your salary. Maybe next time you'll think about helping your family before splurging on a condo. My mind raced, trying to process what was happening. How did you even get access to my account? Your little password book wasn't hard to find. Emma chimed in from the sofa, not looking up from her phone. Mom asked me to look around when I visited last month. Last month, Emma had stopped by unexpectedly, claiming she was in the neighborhood. She'd asked to use my bathroom and had been gone for nearly 15 minutes. I hadn't thought anything of it at the time. You went through my things, I asked, betrayal cutting deeper by the second. Dad waved dismissively. Don't be so sensitive. We raised you clothed. You put a roof over your head for 18 years. You owe us. I owe you. I put myself through college. I've worked since I was 16. And now you're doing well while we're struggling, Mom snapped. That's not how family works, Adrian. Family helps family. Help is something you ask for, not something you steal. I was shouting now, unable to contain my anger. Dad stood up, pointing a finger at me. "Watch your tone, boy. That fancy job doesn't make you better than us." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "What did you do with my money?" "Well," Mom began, suddenly looking pleased with herself. "We paid off some bills, bought a few necessities." "Like what?" I interrupted. Mom gestured to her outfit. "This blouse was on sale and I got your father some new golf clubs. He deserves them after working so hard all these years." "And we're planning a little vacation," Dad added. "We haven't been anywhere in years." "To Tokyo," I said flatly, remembering his earlier comment. "With my next paycheck, too, apparently." He had the audacity to grin. "Now you're getting it. You make so much money now you won't even miss it." Just then, Emma stood up and dangled a set of keys. "And thanks for the upgrade, bro," she said with a smirk. "My old car was such a beater." I stared at the keys in disbelief. "You bought her a car with my money." "Just a used Honda," Mom said defensively. "Nothing fancy." "It's a 2-year-old Civic," Emma bragged. "Way better than that trash heap you drive." The room started spinning. My own family had conspired against me, stolen my savings, and now expected me to be okay with it. 2 years of sacrifice gone in an afternoon spent on golf clubs, clothes, a car for my sister, and a vacation for my parents. "I want my money back," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "All of it. Now." Mom laughed, actually laughed. "Don't be ridiculous, Adrian. It's spent." "Then sell the car, return the clubs, cancel the trip." "No can do," Dad said firmly. "But hey, with your new promotion, you'll save it back in no time." "Get out," I whispered. "What did you say?" Mom asked, her eyes narrowing. "Get out of my apartment. Now." My voice was shaking with rage. "Now listen here," Dad started, but I cut him off. "No, you listen. You stole from me. You betrayed my trust. Get out before I call the police." Mom stood up, gathering her purse. "The police? On your own parents? You wouldn't dare. Try me." Emma, finally sensing the gravity of the situation, moved toward the door. "Maybe we should go. This is how you treat us after everything we've done for you." Dad's face was red with anger. "Leave your key," I told them. "You no longer have permission to enter my home." "Fine," Mom snapped, throwing her key on the table. "But don't come crying to us when you realize how lonely life is without family." Dad leaned in close as he passed me. "This is your apartment. Funny, I thought I was the one who co-signed the lease because your credit wasn't good enough. One call to the landlord." I hadn't thought of that. Dad had indeed co-signed my lease when I first moved in, before I had established good credit. "You wouldn't," I said, but the smirk on his face told me he absolutely would. "Out by tomorrow," he said. "Or we'll see just how much that fancy job of yours matters when you're homeless." They left, slamming the door behind them. I stood in my apartment, surrounded by half-eaten food I hadn't wanted, wine glasses that weren't mine, and the devastating knowledge that my own family had systematically betrayed me. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, and did something I hadn't done since I was a child. I cried. I couldn't stay in my apartment that night. The walls seemed to close in on me, every corner holding a fresh memory of betrayal. I packed an overnight bag, grabbed my laptop, and checked into a budget hotel downtown. $49 a night that I couldn't really afford anymore, but I needed space to think. Lying on the stiff hotel bed, staring at water stains on the ceiling, memories flooded back. Dad borrowing the $20 I'd earned mowing lawns when I was 12, promising to pay me back come payday. He never did. Mom taking the birthday money my grandparents sent me to put in your college fund, a fund I later learned never existed. The pattern had been there all along. I'd just been too young to recognize it, and later too hopeful that things had changed. Sleep evaded me. Around 3 in the morning, I opened my laptop and started researching my legal options. Unauthorized bank access, theft, fraud. Surely there was some recourse available to me. I composed an email to my bank explaining the situation, then fell into a restless sleep just as dawn was breaking. The bank's response came by mid-morning. Since the password had been used for access, and since I had no proof that I hadn't shared it voluntarily with my parents, there was little they could do. They suggested filing a police report if I believed a crime had been committed. A crime by my own parents. Could I really do that? Despite everything, some deeply ingrained sense of family loyalty held me back. They'd raised me, however, imperfectly. Could I really see them arrested? I called my friend Zach, the only person I trusted enough to share this humiliating situation with. They did what? He exploded after I explained. Adrian, that's straight-up theft. I know, I sighed. But they're my parents. No, Zach said firmly. Parents protect their children. They don't rob them blind. You need to talk to a lawyer. He was right. I found a legal aid office that offered free 30-minute consultations and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. The lawyer, a woman named Melissa, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, listened carefully to my story. Unfortunately, she said when I finished, this is legally complicated. Since they used your password, the bank likely won't recognize it as unauthorized access. And because they're family members, it becomes a matter of he said, she said, about whether you gave them permission. So they just get away with stealing $14,000, I asked incredulously. Not necessarily. You have two options: file a police report and press charges for theft, or pursue civil action to recover the funds. Which would you recommend? She leaned back, considering. Honestly, try one more time to resolve this directly with your family. If that fails, the civil route might be best. Criminal charges against family members can get messy, and prosecutors sometimes hesitate to pursue what they see as family disputes. I left her office with a heavy heart. I had to make a decision: either write off the money as an expensive lesson about trust, or take a stand that might permanently sever my relationship with my family. As I walked back to my hotel, my phone buzzed with texts from my mother. Your father talked to the landlord. You have until Friday to move out. Don't be difficult about this, Adrian. Family helps family. Call us when you've calmed down. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done, just expectation that I would calm down and accept their theft as normal family behavior. Something hardened inside me. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about respect, boundaries, and consequences. I texted back, I'll be out by Friday. Don't contact me again until you're ready to return what you stole. Then I blocked their numbers. That evening I returned to my apartment to start packing. To my shock, I found my parents and several relatives I rarely spoke to having what appeared to be a party in my living room. There he is, my Uncle Doug called out when I entered. The big-shot programmer with the fancy new promotion. My mother rushed over, acting as if nothing had happened. Adrian, honey, I tried calling you. We wanted to celebrate with the whole family. I stood frozen in the doorway of my own apartment watching, as relatives lounged on my furniture eating food I hadn't bought, celebrating a promotion that had led to the worst betrayal of my life. Moving toward the kitchen to get away from the crowd, I overheard my father talking to my Aunt Linda. Yeah, Adrian's been doing so well, he insisted on helping us out. Paid off our credit cards, bought Emma a reliable car. He's finally showing some appreciation for all we did for him. That's so generous, Aunt Linda replied. My kids could take a lesson from him. My father laughed. Well, we did have to nudge him a little. You know how these young people are all wrapped up in themselves. But I always say you haven't really succeeded until you can give back to those who raised you. Absolutely, Aunt Linda agreed. So what are you doing with the rest of his money? Patricia's always wanted to see Japan, Dad replied, referring to my mother. Figure we'll do it right: first-class tickets, nice hotels. Adrian's next bonus should cover it nicely. His next bonus. They weren't done. They expected this to be an ongoing arrangement, access to my money whenever they wanted it. I retreated to my bedroom, locked the door, and leaned against it, my mind racing. This wasn't a one-time theft. This was the beginning of a systematic plan to exploit me financially for years to come. I had to get out. Not just out of this apartment, but out of this toxic family dynamic. I needed space to think, plan, and protect myself. The next morning I called in sick to work for the first time since I'd been hired. I spent the day apartment hunting, finally finding a small studio in a secure building with a doorman. It was more expensive than my current place, but safety from my family was worth the extra cost. By Friday, I had moved out of my old apartment, leaving the keys with the building manager. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not Emma, not even Zach, where I was living now. I needed time to gather my thoughts and formulate a plan. My new apartment was sparse, just a mattress on the floor, my clothes and my computer equipment. But it was mine, and for the first time in days I felt like I could breathe again. That night I made a list of everything I needed to do to protect myself from further exploitation. New bank accounts at a different bank, changed passwords for everything, email, social media work accounts, new phone number, credit freeze to prevent anyone from opening accounts in my name. It was a start, but I knew it wasn't enough. Sooner or later I would have to confront my family about what they'd done, and when that time came I needed to be prepared. On Monday morning I returned to work with dark circles under my eyes but a clear mind. My boss Mark noticed immediately. "Rough weekend?" he asked as we passed in the hallway. "Just some family issues," I replied, not ready to share the details. "Well, don't let it affect your work. That Henderson project needs your full attention." I nodded and headed to my desk, throwing myself into coding to escape my personal problems. Around noon, my desk phone rang an internal call from reception. "Adrian, there's a woman here who says she's your mother. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's insisting on seeing you." My heart raced. How had she found my workplace, Emma? Probably her friend worked in another department. "Tell her I'm in a meeting and can't be disturbed," I instructed, then added, "Actually, please add Patricia Collins to the list of people not authorized to enter the building." "Certainly, sir," the receptionist replied, sounding slightly surprised. An hour later, my email pinged with a message from my mother's account. "How dare you embarrass me like that? The receptionist treated me like some kind of criminal. Your father and I expect you for dinner tonight at 6. We need to discuss your behavior and your financial obligations to this family." Financial obligations? As if I owed them access to my bank account simply because we shared DNA. I didn't respond. Instead, I scheduled a meeting with HR to ensure my parents couldn't access my workspace or information about my employment. The next week passed in tense silence. I changed my phone number, but they found ways to contact me through work, email, through friends, even through a cousin I barely spoke to. Each message held the same theme: I was selfish, ungrateful, and owed them support. Then came the escalation. I arrived at work one morning to find my sister Emma waiting by the building entrance. "You've got to talk to them," she said, falling into step beside me. "They're driving me crazy." "Not my problem," I replied coldly. "Look about the car. The car you bought with my stolen money. What about it?" She at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I didn't know they took the money without asking. They told me you offered." "And you believed that? When have I ever just handed over thousands of dollars?" Emma shrugged. "People change. I thought maybe the promotion went to your head made you all generous or whatever." I stopped walking and faced her. "They stole my entire savings, Emma. 2 years of working overtime, skipping vacations, eating ramen instead of going out with friends. All gone. They're saying you owe them for raising you," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Do you believe that?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe not like this, but they did sacrifice a lot for us." "For you," I corrected. "I've been on my own since I was 18. That's not fair. Neither is stealing $14,000. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. "What do you want me to do?" she finally asked. "Sell the car, return my portion of the money." Her eyes widened. "I can't do that. I need that car for work." "You managed before. Figure it out." "Adrian, please." "Goodbye, Emma." I walked into my building, leaving her standing on the sidewalk. It was harsh, but necessary. Emma had been complicit in the theft, even if she hadn't known the full story initially. Actions had consequences. That evening I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Adrian Collins," a male voice asked. "Who's calling?" "This is Paul Hernandez from Boston Credit Union. I'm calling about an application for a joint checking account that was submitted yesterday." My blood ran cold. I didn't apply for any account. Well, we have an application here with your name and social security number requesting to open a joint account with Patricia Collins. My mother was trying to open accounts in my name. That's fraud, I said firmly. I did not authorize that application. After spending an hour on the phone filing fraud reports, I called the lawyer again. This had gone beyond a family dispute, it was now identity theft. The following Sunday, my parents escalated further. They showed up at a restaurant where I was having lunch with Zach, somehow having tracked me there, probably through social media. Adrian, enough of this nonsense, my father said, loudly sliding into our booth uninvited. We're still your parents and you will treat us with respect. People at nearby tables turned to stare. Please leave, I said quietly. This is neither the time nor place. My mother reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. We raised you better than this. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I asked, pulling my hand away. Put me through college. No, I did that myself. Help with my car. No, bought that myself too. Support me emotionally. Definitely not. We gave you life, she hissed. We fed you, clothed you. The bare minimum required by law, I interrupted. And now you think that entitles you to everything I earn. My father's face darkened. You ungrateful little. Sir, our waiter intervened. I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or leave. Mind your own business, my father snapped. Dad, stop, I said firmly. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene. You're the one who's cut off his own family. Your mother cries herself to sleep every night. Zach, who had been silent until now, stood up. Mr. Collins, I think you and Mrs. Collins should leave before the manager gets involved. My father glared at him. And who are you to tell me what to do? I'm the guy who's about to call security if you don't walk away right now, Zach replied calmly. My parents looked around, suddenly aware of the attention they were attracting. With a final glare, my father stood up. This isn't over, Adrian. Actually, it is, I replied. Unless you're ready to return my money and apologize. They stormed out, leaving an awkward silence in their wake. Dude, Zach said as he sat back down, you need a restraining order. I nodded slowly. I think you're right. Later that evening, as I was entering my apartment building, my sister called from yet another unknown number. Adrian, you need to know something, she said, her voice uncharacteristically serious. They're in real trouble. What do you mean? They remortgaged the house last year. They're behind on payments. Dad's been gambling. It's bad. Why are you telling me this? Because I think they took your money to save the house, not for a trip or golf clubs. They're drowning, Adrian. For a moment I felt a pang of sympathy. Then I remembered the callous way they'd justified their theft. That doesn't excuse what they did, Emma. No, she agreed, surprising me. It doesn't. But I'm scared for them. After we hung up, I sat on my bare mattress thinking, if Emma was telling the truth, my parents' financial situation was even worse than I'd imagined. But that made their actions more calculated, not less. They hadn't stolen from me impulsively, they'd planned it, targeting my savings as a solution to problems of their own making. The next evening, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I arrived early, selected a table with clear sightlines to the exits, and waited. They entered together, looking less confident than I'd ever seen them. My mother's eyes were puffy from crying, and my father seemed to have aged years in mere weeks. Thank you for meeting us, Mom began as they sat down. I didn't respond, just waited. Dad cleared his throat. Son, we may have been hasty in how we handled things. Hasty, I repeated. You stole $14,000, threatened to make me homeless, tried to commit identity fraud, and harassed me at work. That's not hasty. That's criminal. Mom flinched. We're your parents, Adrian. We needed help. Then you should have asked for help, I cut in. You don't get to decide what happens to my money. We were desperate, Dad admitted. The bank was threatening foreclosure. So you thought stealing from me was the solution. Not selling your golf clubs or Mom's jewelry or downsizing the house. It had to be my money. They exchanged glances. We're family, Mom said, as if that explained everything. Family doesn't steal from family, I replied firmly. Family respects boundaries. What do you want from us? Dad asked, his voice hollow. I want my money back. All of it. And I want a written apology acknowledging what you did was wrong. We don't have the money, Mom said. It's gone. Then sell the house. Sell the car. Get jobs delivering pizza if you have to. Figure it out. Dad's expression hardened. You'd make your own parents homeless. You were willing to do the same to me, I reminded him. Actions have consequences. So that's it, Mom asked, tears forming. We mean nothing to you now. I took a deep breath. You chose money over our relationship, not me. If you want to rebuild trust, it starts with making this right. And if we can't, then we have nothing more to say to each other. I stood up, leaving them sitting in stunned silence. As I walked away, I felt a curious mixture of sadness and strength. For the first time in my life, I had set a clear boundary with my parents. Whether they respected it or not was their choice now. The confrontation at the coffee shop marked a turning point. I realized that hoping for my parents to suddenly develop a moral conscience was futile. I needed to take concrete action to protect myself and possibly recover some of my losses. First, stop a new financial advisor recommended by my company's HR department. Jason Chen specialized in helping young professionals establish secure financial foundations. What happened to you is unfortunately not uncommon, Jason said after I explained my situation. Family financial exploitation happens more often than people realize. Together, we created a comprehensive protection plan. I opened new accounts at a credit union with no connection to my previous bank. We established a series of secure passwords and authentication methods that couldn't be easily guessed or accessed. I set up credit monitoring to alert me of any new applications in my name. Now, Jason said, leaning forward, let's talk about recovering your money. Is that even possible? I asked, skeptical. Possibly through small claims court. The limit in Massachusetts is $7,000, so you couldn't recover the full amount in one case, but it's a start. I nodded, taking notes. What would I need to prove my case? Any evidence that the money was taken without permission. Text messages, emails, witnesses who heard them admit to taking it. I thought of the family gathering where I'd overheard my father bragging about using my money. My cousin Taylor had been standing there too. Would she be willing to testify? The next day I consulted with a different lawyer, one who specialized in family financial disputes. She helped me draft a formal demand letter to my parents, outlining exactly what they had taken and the consequences if they didn't make arrangements to repay it. Send this by certified mail, she advised. It creates a paper trail showing you've attempted to resolve this without court action. While I waited for a response, I focused on rebuilding my security. I changed all my passwords using a complex system that couldn't be guessed. I installed a password manager with two-factor authentication. I froze my credit at all 3 major bureaus. At work, I met with HR again to ensure my parents couldn't access my employment information or payroll details. I'd like to change my emergency contact and make sure my parents can't access any information about me, I explained to the HR director. She looked concerned. Is everything okay, Adrian? Family dispute, I said simply. I need to protect my personal information. She nodded. We can certainly update your file, and just so you know, we never release salary information to anyone but the employee. Thank you, I said, relieved. And can we make sure any bonuses or raises aren't announced publicly? Absolutely. Your compensation is confidential. With work secured, I turned my attention to Emma. Despite her complicity, she was also a victim of our parents' manipulation. I arranged to meet her at a park near her workplace. I'm not selling the car, she said immediately upon sitting down. I'm not asking you to, I replied. But I do want you to understand what they did was wrong. She sighed, picking at the sleeve of her coffee cup. I know. Do you? Because you seemed pretty comfortable benefiting from their theft. I told you I didn't know they stole it. They said you wanted to help with the car. And that didn't seem suspicious to you. When have I ever offered to buy you a car? She looked away. I guess I wanted to believe them. We sat in silence for a moment. They used you too, Emma, I finally said. They're using your connection to me to try to get access to my money again. What do you mean? The calls, the texts, showing up at my workplace. You're telling them where to find me, aren't you? She had the decency to look ashamed. They said they just wanted to talk to you to apologize. If they wanted to apologize, they would have returned my money. Emma nodded slowly. They're in really bad shape, Adrian. Dad lost his job 3 months ago. He's been pretending to go to work, but he's actually been going to the casino. This was news to me. Is that where my money went? Some of it, probably. Mom doesn't know about the gambling. She thinks he's still working. The situation was worse than I'd thought. Not only had they stolen from me, but they were lying to each other as well. Emma, listen to me carefully, I said. You need to protect yourself too. Check your credit report, make sure they haven't opened accounts in your name. Her eyes widened. Would they do that? They stole $14,000 from me and showed no remorse. What do you think? She looked down at her hands. What should I do? Distance yourself. Get your own place if you can afford it. Don't give them access to your financial information. I can't just abandon them, she protested. I'm not saying cut them off completely. I'm saying protect yourself while they figure out their own mess. We talked for another hour, and by the end, Emma seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. She agreed to be more careful about sharing information about me and promised to check her own credit report. The certified letter I'd sent my parents came back refused. They weren't even willing to acknowledge my attempt at resolution. Meanwhile, I discovered they'd been contacting my friends, extended family, and even colleagues, painting me as an ungrateful son who had abandoned them in their time of need. Several relatives called me, urging me to make peace with my parents. They made mistakes, but they love you, my Aunt Susan insisted over the phone. Did they tell you they stole my entire savings? I asked. They said they borrowed money for an emergency, and now you're refusing to speak to them. They didn't borrow anything. They took it without permission. That's theft. They're family, Adrian. Family helps family. That phrase again. It seemed to be the justification for everything. Would you be okay with your son stealing your retirement fund? I asked. Well, of course not, but then don't expect me to be okay with it either. One by one, I had these conversations with family members. Some understood my position once they heard the full story. Others remained firmly on my parents' side, unable or unwilling to see their actions as wrong. Then came an unexpected ally. My Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, called me late one evening. I heard about what happened, she said without preamble, and I want you to know I believe you. You do. I was genuinely surprised. They did the same thing to me 10 years ago. Cleaned out a CD I'd been saving for my daughter's college fund, said it was for a medical emergency, but Robert bought a boat the next month. Hearing that my parents had a history of this behavior was both validating and deeply disturbing. Did you ever get the money back? I asked. No, she sighed. I was too embarrassed to pursue it legally, but I've kept my distance ever since. You're right to protect yourself, Adrian. Thank you for telling me this, I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Finally, someone who understood without judgment. If you need a witness for anything legal, I'm available, she offered. I've got emails where Patricia admitted taking the money, claiming she'd pay me back someday. With Aunt Patricia's support and the documentation I'd been gathering, I felt ready to take the next step. I filed a small claims court case against my parents for the maximum amount of $7,000. The day after they were served with the court papers, Emma called me in a panic. Dad's freaking out, she said. He's threatening to disown you, cut you out of the will, all kinds of stuff. I don't care, I replied honestly. Any inheritance would probably be debt anyway. Mom's talking about selling her jewelry. I think she's serious about trying to pay you back. That was the first hopeful news I'd heard. How much could she get for it? I don't know, maybe $3,000 or $4,000. It's mostly costume jewelry, but she has a few real pieces from Grandma. Tell her it's a start, I said. But I'm not dropping the court case until I see actual money. 3 days later, Emma showed up at my apartment building with an envelope. Inside was $3,500 in cash and a handwritten note from my mother. Adrian, this is from selling my jewelry. I'm sorry for taking your money without permission. We were desperate, but that doesn't make it right. I'll try to get more. Mom. It wasn't the full amount, and the apology was vague, but it was something. I texted Emma, "Tell Mom I received the money and appreciate the effort. I'll credit it toward the total, but we're still going to court unless the full amount is returned." The next day, Emma texted me a photo of a receipt showing that she had sold her car, my car, really for $6,000. "I'm keeping enough for a cheap used car," she wrote. "The rest is yours." In the end, between my mother's jewelry and a portion of the car sale, I recovered just over $7,000, half of what had been taken. It wasn't perfect, but it was more than I had expected to get back. I agreed to drop the court case in exchange for a signed acknowledgement from both parents that they had taken the money without permission and a promise not to attempt accessing any of my accounts in the future. My father signed grudgingly, my mother with tears in her eyes. Neither fully acknowledged the depth of their betrayal, but they had at least faced some consequences for their actions. Just when I thought the situation was stabilizing, my parents escalated in a way I never anticipated. On a Tuesday morning, as I was heading into an important client meeting, they showed up at my workplace unannounced. "Sir, there's a couple in reception insisting on seeing you, my team lead," said, pulling me aside. "They say they're your parents and it's an emergency." My heart sank. It's not an emergency. They're trying to cause problems. Should I call security? I hesitated. Having my parents escorted out by security would create exactly the kind of scene they wanted. "Let me handle it," I said, heading toward reception. They were standing in the middle of the waiting area, my father red-faced, and my mother dabbing at fake tears. "Adrian," she cried dramatically when she saw me. "Thank goodness. We've been trying to reach you for days." Several of my colleagues turned to look. This was exactly what I didn't want. "There's no emergency," I said, quietly but firmly. "And you know my phone number if you needed to reach me." "How could you take your own parents to court?" my father demanded loudly. "After everything we've done for you." People were definitely staring now. I needed to get them out of there before this damaged my professional reputation. "Let's talk outside," I said, gesturing toward the door. "We're not going anywhere until you explain yourself," Dad insisted, his voice rising further. "Everyone here should know what kind of son you are." At that moment, my boss Mark emerged from a conference room. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his expression neutral but his tone stern. "These are my parents," I explained. "They were just leaving." "We most certainly were not," my mother protested. "We came to talk sense into our son who's been—" Mr. and Mrs. Collins, Mark interrupted. "I'm Mark Davidson, Adrian's manager. Whatever family issues you're experiencing, this is not the place to resolve them. I'm going to have to ask you to leave before I call security." "Fine," my father snapped. "But everyone should know that Adrian is suing his own parents while we're about to lose our home." As they were escorted out by security, my mother turned to address the now silent reception area. He'd let his own parents become homeless over a loan. A loan. They were still characterizing theft as a loan. Mark turned to me after they were gone. "Take the rest of the day, Adrian. Deal with this." "I'm sorry about that," I said, mortified. "They stole money from me." He held up a hand. "You don't need to explain. My father emptied my college fund to buy a motorcycle when I was 18. I get it." His understanding was unexpected and deeply appreciated. "Thank you," I said simply. "Just make sure it doesn't happen again. This is a place of business." I nodded and headed back to my desk to gather my things. Word of the scene had already spread through the office, and I could feel curious eyes watching me. As I was leaving, a colleague named Diana approached me. "Hey, I overheard what happened. I'm really sorry." "Thanks," I said, embarrassed. "My mom did something similar to me a few years ago," she continued. "Took out credit cards in my name, maxed them out. It took me 2 years to clean up my credit." "How did you handle it?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Filed a police report eventually. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the only way to clear my credit." "Did your relationship survive?" She smiled sadly. "We don't talk much now, but honestly, that's probably for the best. That evening, determined to understand the full scope of my parents' financial situation, I did something I'd been avoiding. I looked them up in public records. What I found shocked me. 3 liens against their house, a judgment from a credit card company, a pending foreclosure action, and most disturbing of all, a bankruptcy filing from 5 years ago that I'd known nothing about. They hadn't just recently fallen on hard times. They'd been financially irresponsible for years, possibly decades, and now they expected me to bail them out to be the solution to problems of their own making. Armed with this knowledge, I called Emma. "Did you know Mom and Dad filed for bankruptcy 5 years ago?" I asked without preamble. She was silent for a moment. "Yes," she finally admitted. "They made me promise not to tell you." "Why?" "They were embarrassed, I guess. And they were afraid you'd stop helping them if you knew how bad things were." "Helping them? When have I ever helped them financially?" Another pause. "Adrian, they've been taking money from your account since you were in college." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. "What are you talking about?" "Remember that joint account you opened when you were 18? The one for your tuition payments? They never took their names off it. They've been transferring small amounts, 50 here, 100 there, for years." I sat down hard on my couch. The joint account had been my father's idea, a way to easily deposit money for tuition and books. I thought it was closed years ago. How much, I managed to ask. "I don't know exactly. Thousands probably over the years." It explained so much why they always seemed to know when I got paid, why they called asking for loans when I had extra in my account, why they were so angry when I moved my savings to a new account they couldn't access. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because they're talking about doing it to me now," she said quietly. "Dad asked me to add him to my checking account yesterday, just in case of emergency." A surge of protectiveness rushed through me. For all her flaws, Emma was still my sister. "Don't do it," I said firmly. "Don't give them access to anything." "I know. I already told him no." "Good. Listen, we need to talk to them together. Present a united front." We arranged a meeting at a restaurant the following evening, neutral territory where they couldn't make too much of a scene. They arrived looking defensive, already prepared for a fight. "What's this about my father?" demanded as he slid into the booth. "We know about the bankruptcy," I said, without preamble, "and about the money you've been taking from my accounts for years." My mother's face went pale. My father's reddened. "Emma," he snapped, "you promised never to." "Don't blame her," I interrupted. "This is about your actions, not hers." "We're your parents," my mother said, falling back on her usual justification. "Everything we did was for your own good. Taking money from my account without permission was for my own good. Explain that logic." "You had more than you needed," my father said dismissively. "We made sure you didn't get spoiled." "By stealing from me. By teaching you the value of helping family," he countered. Emma, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Dad, you asked me to add you to my checking account yesterday. Why?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Just to have access in case of emergency." "The truth," she insisted. My father looked away. My mother stared at her hands. "We're behind on the mortgage again," she finally admitted. "The bank is threatening foreclosure." Even after taking my $14,000, I asked incredulously. "It wasn't enough," my father muttered. "We had other debts." "Like what?" More uncomfortable silence. "Like what?" I repeated more forcefully. "Your father has a gambling problem," my mother said, still not looking up. "He's been borrowing from people you don't borrow from. Loan sharks." My father had gotten involved with loan sharks. "Jesus," I breathed. "This is so much worse than I thought." "We need help," my mother said, finally meeting my eyes. "Real help this time." "Not financial help," I said firmly. "You've proven you can't be trusted with money. But I'll help you find resources, financial counseling, gambling, addiction, support, maybe bankruptcy protection again." "We don't need counseling," my father protested. "We need cash." "No," Emma and I said simultaneously. My father looked between us, seemingly shocked by the united front. "After everything we've done for you both." "Stop." I cut him off. "That line doesn't work anymore. Here's what's going to happen. I have a friend who's a financial counselor. You're going to meet with him, follow his advice, and deal with your problems like adults. In return, I won't pursue further legal action for the money you stole." And Emma added, "You're going to sign something promising never to access either of our accounts again." Or what my father challenged. I pulled out my phone and held it up. "Or I send this recording of you admitting to stealing from my accounts for years to the police." My state had one-party consent for recordings. What they had done was theft, plain and simple, and now I had proof. The color drained from my father's face. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I said evenly. That night marked the true turning point. For the first time, my parents seemed to understand that their actions had real consequences. The power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. My father agreed to seek help for his gambling addiction. My mother committed to financial counseling. Both signed a document acknowledging their unauthorized access to my accounts and promising never to do it again. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. As Emma and I walked to our cars after the meeting, she nudged my shoulder. "That was badass, you know, standing up to them like that." I smiled ruefully. "Felt pretty terrible, actually." "Yeah," she agreed, "but necessary. Think they'll follow through?" She shrugged. "Maybe. If they don't, at least we tried." "At least we tried," I echoed. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The money was still gone, but I had regained something more valuable, my autonomy and self-respect. 6 months passed. True to their word, my parents attended financial counseling, and my father joined Gamblers Anonymous. I kept my distance, requiring detailed updates from Emma rather than communicating with them directly. Trust once broken takes time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all. I focused on regaining my financial footing. My promotion had increased my salary, and without the drain of my parents' constant emergencies, I found myself able to save again. It was slower this time. I was more cautious, more deliberate with every dollar. My new apartment became a home. I invested in a proper bed, a comfortable couch, a desk for my computer, small luxuries that reminded me that my money was my own to use as I saw fit. My relationship with Emma deepened. She had taken my advice and moved into her own apartment, establishing independence from our parents for the first time in her life. We had dinner together weekly, comparing notes on adulting and supporting each other's boundaries with our parents. Dad asked for money again yesterday. She told me over pizza one Friday night. "Just $20 for gas," he said. "What did you do?" I asked. Told him no. She smiled proudly. "It was hard, but I did it." "Good for you." He got angry, said I was turning out just like you. She grinned. I told him I hoped so. 3 months into their financial counseling, my parents sold their house, the one they'd nearly lost to foreclosure multiple times. They downsized to a small condo, significantly reducing their monthly expenses. It was a practical decision, if long overdue. At the 9-month mark, I received a letter from my mother. Not an email or text, but an actual handwritten letter. Inside was a check for $3,000 and a note. "Adrian, this is another payment toward what we took from you. The financial counselor has helped us create a repayment plan. You'll receive $500 each month until the full amount is restored. We know money alone can't rebuild trust, but we hope it's a start. With regret and love, Mom." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was genuine progress. I deposited the check, half expecting it to bounce. It didn't. True to their word, $500 arrived each month after that. I put it all into a separate savings account, not quite trusting that it would continue, not quite ready to rely on it. A year after the original theft, I closed on my first home, a small one-bedroom condo in a secure building. It wasn't the place I'd originally dreamed of, but it was mine, bought with money I had earned and protected. Emma helped me move in, exclaiming over the hardwood floors and the tiny balcony with a view of a nearby park. "You did it," she said as we collapsed onto my couch after carrying up the last box. "Despite everything, you did it." "We did it," I corrected her. "You're in a better place too." She nodded thoughtfully. "I never would have moved out if all this hadn't happened. As awful as it was, maybe we needed the wake-up call." That evening, as Emma headed home to her own apartment, I sat alone in my new space and reflected on the painful journey of the past year. I had lost $14,000, half of which I'd recovered, but I had gained something far more valuable, the knowledge that I could stand up for myself, even against the people who were supposed to love me most. I had learned that family means respect, not exploitation. That boundaries are necessary, even perhaps especially with parents. The hardest lesson had been accepting that the parents I wanted, supportive, respectful, financially responsible, weren't the parents I had. I had to deal with the reality of who they were, not the fantasy of who I wished they could be. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Congratulations on your new home. Your father and I are proud of you." I stared at the message for a long time before responding, "Thank you. Maybe you can visit sometime." It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was an opening a possibility. The healing process would be long. Trust once shattered doesn't mend easily. But I was on my way. We all were in our own ways. The $14,000 they took taught me lessons no amount of money could buy, that I was stronger than I knew, that real love doesn't come with financial strings attached, that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for a relationship is to set firm boundaries. Most importantly, I learned that financial security isn't just about the numbers in your bank account. It's about protecting yourself from those who would exploit your generosity, even if they share your DNA. Today, my relationship with my parents is cautious but cordial. We talk, occasionally meet for holidays, but financial matters remain strictly off limits. Emma has blossomed into a more confident, independent woman, careful with her money and protective of her boundaries. As for me, I continue to build my career and my savings one day at a time. The betrayal will always be part of my story, but it no longer defines me. Instead, it's a chapter that made me wiser, stronger, and more compassionate toward others who have experienced similar family betrayals. If you've ever had someone you trusted violate that trust, especially family, know that you're not alone. It's okay to protect yourself. It's okay to set boundaries. And it's absolutely okay to expect better from the people who claim to love you. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members over money or other issues? Drop a comment below and share your experience. Your story might help someone else who's going through something similar. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. Remember, sharing your story can be the first step in healing. Thanks for listening, and I hope you found some value in my journey.